Back to the book. I now have little doubt that, for the first 2 months in Normandy, we lacked two things: comprehensive and imaginative training and personal experience of battle. We were also seriously handicapped by our casual attitude. Too many junior officers did not think for themselves and persistently relied on the narrow teaching of battle schools, whose dogma had assumed the proportion of Holy Writ. So whatever he was taught that that's the only way you can ever do it. And these guys, and I've talked about this many times on the podcast. The goal when I was running training was to actually get the people to think. It wasn't sure, you have to establish the baseline standard operating procedures. That's great. And those need to be rock solid. But once those things are established, you need to make people understand that you don't always follow them. And you need to cut off a piece of that standard operating procedure and insert some other thing and bring in another standard operating procedure and mix and match them so that you get something that's effective. You need to think. That's what a leader needs to do. A leader needs to think. Back to the book. The British infantry platoons and companies were overtrained and bored stiff with basic infantry tactics, which, as far as they went, were good. Much of this training, unfortunately, had been in the hands of battle school instructors who themselves lacked battle experience and imagination. These tended to become pedagogues, disciples of DS, directing staff, solution, about which no argument could be tolerated. So DS is, he mentions it a bunch. He's like, that's their solution. The directing staff, you can't argue with them. They're the cadre.
Yeah.
Possibly, like most of our infantry, they suffered some consequences of the pre-war shortage of creativity, intelligent regimental officers. Too few of them were professionally dedicated to the extent that they could visualize how battles would be fought and identify the problems that might arise when planning them. They seemed to lack the capacity to think relentlessly through these things until solutions were found. Much of their time had been spent policing the British Empire. Also, unlike the Germans, we British instinctively avoid displays of keenness. The enthusiast, particularly if he is innovative, is an embarrassment. Thus, the battlefield became our teacher, and inevitably, it exacted a grim price in blood and time. So, as you're training, you got to push yourself hard. You've got to put yourself in situations, and I don't care what you're training for. I don't care if you're training for combat, in a SEAL platoon, in an Army infantry platoon, or if you're in the business world and you're training your leaders to handle situations, or you're training your customer service reps to handle situations. No matter which one of those you're in, you need to push people hard. You need to put them in worst case scenarios so that they need to learn how to think to get out of those problems. I recall with embarrassment an incident at 45th Infantry Divisional Battle School during the spring of 1944. An exceptionally tall and good-natured Canadian officer had been sent to the school to give a talk on the street fighting he had experienced in Italy. It was an interesting talk, but some of his advice ran contrary to that being taught in the school. When the lecture was over, the chief instructor, with insulting condescension, thanked this shy and kindly man for a vivid word picture and, turning to the students, warned us that, as this officer's experience was probably unusual, we had best not stray from the DS solution as taught at that school. So you got a combat veteran coming back with experience from street fighting in Italy, and he'd come back with some different tactics, and they tell him, don't listen to that guy. That's just a rare case. Closed mind will get you killed.